You want to know how to mess people up big time? Well, it's easy. Just constantly remind them of their second most powerful innate drive, and then make it socially unacceptable to even discuss it. This cultural neurosis breeds a dangerous repression that leads to sexual violence, exploitation, self-destructive behavior, and even sometimes laughable heights of hypocrisy. We can give most of the religions of the world a collective high five for this state of affairs. However, things are changing. Just as we are witnessing an unprecedented global pushback on the political status quo of elites dictating what is best for us, there's another revolution taking hold as well. And this one is about bringing human sexuality into the light of day as a perfectly normal and healthy topic of discussion. One that every single person on this planet needs to be part of. Now, my career, well, actually more of a mission, is about helping adults deeply understand, appreciate, and enjoy the beautiful, transformative power of human sexuality and intimacy. Cancer survivors and their partners are my favorite groups I speak to. These folks in particular often struggle with cancer's impact to their intimacy. I know this directly, having 2 ongoing forms of cancer and being clinically impotent as a result of my treatments. Yet despite those challenges, my partner and I consistently experience levels of sexual fulfillment and intimacy that most couples can barely even imagine. Not too long ago, my partner and I spoke at a Gilda's Club, which is a nonprofit cancer support organization formed in honor of actress Gilda Radner, who died of ovarian cancer. The title of our talk was Return to Intimacy for Cancer Survivors and Their Partners. Sounds pretty innocent and appropriate enough, doesn't it? Yet the organizer shared how one woman saw their flyer announcing our talk, and her only comment was, "They're actually going to talk about that?" This same organizer also happens to be a licensed marriage and family counselor. She told me how even couples in their early 30s have great difficulty discussing sex with each other. Well, that sort of burst my bubble, thinking only people in my generation were uptight talking about sex. After our presentation, one of the attendees shared how she and her husband were in another group of 250 cancer survivors and partners where the big elephant in the room was sex. She said everyone wanted to know about it in the light of their cancer, but they were afraid to bring it up. Now, we're currently booked to give this same talk to various cancer support communities and Gilda's clubs all around the country. However, we have learned the hard way that more people will actually show up if we change the title to the more sterile, Turning Tragedy into Triumph. Everyone loves to hear an inspirational story of how to turn challenges into something positive. Well, they do hear that. However, it is still about transforming the challenges of cancer and its treatment into an opportunity to experience extraordinary intimacy. In other words, it's the same talk, just a different wrapper. The irony is that everyone wants to hear about improving their intimacy. They just feel terribly uncomfortable about expressing that desire in public. How sad and so unnecessary. Fortunately, we're seeing signs everywhere that this is changing and with growing momentum. Just from my personal experience, I've noticed that millennials in particular seem to be much more at ease talking about sex and intimacy. I was recently interviewed by a 20-something sex and communications coach who is dedicated to spreading wisdom about human sexuality to all who will listen. One who admits to having frank discussions about sex with her parents and I quote, knows about everything they do in their bedroom. That is most certainly a big shift from when I was her age. It is even showing up in technology. Recently, a company called OMG Yes.com, and you know what the OMG stands for, launched their website, which is dedicated to unraveling the mystery and beauty of female sexual anatomy and pleasure. This is a Silicon Valley venture for the purpose of removing the stigma and ignorance surrounding female sexuality. Perhaps the main problem about any conversation about sex, sexuality, and intimacy is separating the notions of overt sexual gratification versus understanding and exploring sex and intimacy as gateways to self-actualization and transcendence. The former still has connotations of sleaze, which often unfortunately spills over into the latter. I also believe the sleaze factor is still prevalent, primarily because we don't have a culture where frank and honest conversation about sex and intimacy is commonplace. The more something is suppressed, the more likely it is to pop up in ways that are distorted and reviled. As more individuals of all walks of life have the courage to be open to real discussion about sex and intimacy, the more the repressive cultural forces against doing so will become, well, impotent. And that is a revolution we should all be part of, for our sake and that of future generations.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Extraordinary Intimacy with Michael J. Russell. For all speaking, media interviews, and workshop inquiries, go to michaelrusselllive.com. For private intimacy coaching, send an email to coaching@michaelrusselllive.com.